How you doing? I'm Nelson. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a nationally certified counselor. I work with youth and adults on a wide range of issues from depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety. I do a lot of community work and I do a lot of work with helping students in school as well.
I'm Angie D. Lee. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and intimacy coach, and I work with couples on helping them reignite passion, pleasure, and connection in their relationships.
A horrible mother. Horrible. I was a great father.
Ooh, hold on. No, we gotta unpack that.
I was a horrible mother, meaning when my kids were growing up, I didn't know what mothering was. I didn't understand it. And because the father wasn't in the home
Right.
in a positive way, I did the providing, I did the protecting, I did the guiding, and I didn't do the nourishing, the nurturing, the affirming. I didn't do that. I didn't have time. I had 3 kids and a job
Right.
and a crazy man. So I had to protect them. I had to provide for them. I had to get the rent paid. I had to make sure that they had structure and system. The things that the father would have done had he been there, I had to do. So I didn't have time to wipe boo-boos and bake cookies and tell you how cute you are and how much I love you. Come on, let's get this done. We got to go.
And so I would definitely say this part really resonated with me more so on a personal level. So I know that she wasn't mentioning that was a father in the literal sense, but more so kind of figuratively what a father, I guess, typically represents in a household. And it sounds like that's what she was explaining, that she really did not even rest in that side of the mothering, the nurturing of herself, because she was really busy just trying to make sure that the household continued to run. and that included her actually, really more so providing and protecting more than anything. And when you talk about like those hierarchy of needs, it sounds like that was her focus at that time. That was what needed to be done. And everything else kind of had to take a backseat, And so I think about with my own mother, and growing up in an environment where my parents were legally married, but they didn't live together for a majority of my childhood. And then also my husband also went through a similar issue where his mom was definitely the person that handled everything and his dad was not present. And I've known, my husband forever because we met at high school, but we've been married for 19 years. But I've also known my mother-in-law for just as long. And so I remember seeing a lot of the things that she was pretty much handling, on her own. And that nurturing side for her just really didn't show up. And what's interesting about my situation is that my mom was legally married. It's just that my parents really didn't live together the majority of the time. So I kind of saw my dad like kind of sporadically, when he decided, to show up. And then he would leave. And it just kind of became our norm. Like, this is just how our family structure is. And then also with my husband, so we've been married 19 years, but I've known him since I was in high school. So I've known his mom as well, my mother-in-law, just as long. And I remember just watching her just really grind, like get up, just go to work. With my mom, there was a little bit more of affection. It's a lot more. My mom was very nurturing. Even with her holding down a lot of things in the household, she was still very much what they call like the demure. They say that word now, but like my mom is like the epitome of demure. So that part came very naturally to her, even when she was trying to take care of all of the bills and keep our home safe. And I don't know how she balanced both, but somehow she did. But for my mother-in-law, it was just a little different. The focus was, I just need to make sure I pay these bills. And don't y'all come back home bringing no babies before time. That was the messaging, right? And so there was a hardness, that was exhibited or exuded, by her. And not all to her fault. There was a lot of things that she saw too growing up in her own household that kind of just trickled down. So I definitely understand when Iyanla talks about being that mother, well, not really being the mother, but kind of being the father, not literally being the father, but like kind of figuratively based off of what a father represents in a household, that had to be the focus. And so I definitely understand that. And I would say, like I said, from a personal standpoint, I could really, really, understand that from what I saw growing up. In the position I'm in now, my kids are fortunate enough, and I hate that it has to be fortunate enough, right? This should all be our norm, to have both of your parents. But in today's time, they're fortunate enough to have both and to see both and to see how both operate, together in unison, where we can balance those hierarchy of needs, so to speak, and one person is not taking on all of the responsibilities. So I thought that was a very powerful, piece right there when she was discussing that. And I think a lot of people probably did resonate with that as well, from what I saw, kind of like in the comments. They knew exactly what she was saying. Like as soon as she said, I was a terrible mother, but I was a great father. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of the moms, probably could really, connect with that.
Yeah, I really respect her take on it. I think naturally for me, I'm a little bit more rigid.
Yeah.
So when I heard her say that, the first thing my mind immediately went to was, okay, you weren't a father at all. Like I tend to be very rigid with when I say that a mother cannot step into a role of a father just as equally as a father cannot step into the role of a mother. Even though we say that we have to play those parts, it's just I guess it's just something about the way that I'm wired that I'm like,
Mhm.
even if I have to be the nurturer, I'm still not able to be the mother because I just look at them as very unique things. She did speak a lot to gender roles though.
Yeah.
And when I did hear her kind of talk about, like, I guess kind of the roles that she assigned to being a father, she talked about being the provider,
Mhm.
making sure that the discipline and the structure was there. Those things, yeah, I definitely can attribute them to what I believe a father's role should be. But then I also look at it as the father should be the nurturer as well. That shouldn't be I don't think that's just a singularly assigned role to the mother. And I even play that out with my kids. I've been married for 14 years, and with I have four boys, all young. And so I make sure I kiss them, hug them, tell them that I love them, do everything with them because I want them to have both sides of love. Like I want them to be able to know how to love a woman,
Mhm.
but I want them to know how to love their brother too. I want them to know what that looks like when men love each other and show kindness and friendship and respect
Yeah.
and all those things. So I haven't wrapped my head fully around what she's talked about because I'm sure there's some flaws in my presentation. But if I can just talk off the top of my head of what it made me think and feel when I heard her say that, it was more so along the lines of, you know, these shouldn't, we can't try to interchange the two. It can't, a father can't try and be a mother, a mother can't be try and be a father. And there's arguments for and against, but that was just on a personal note. That was just kind of where I went with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it goes back to what we've talked about before when it comes to like our terminology and our, how we speak on different things in our heads, it makes sense. Right. And I think this is really important too. Like with Iyanla, to some degree, I'm able to kind of see the direction she was going in terms of how a woman processes things. Right. And a lot of times uh, we do forget that, again, when we're speaking to an audience, we have to be able to reach both. And I can definitely see how that could have possibly even turned off some of the males, who could have been viewing it. And it's just like, yeah, I was rocking with you, until you said that one. So yeah, it's like you always have to kind of keep in mind that, again, like you said, biologically, you're not a man, and in a lot of ways, you'll never be, a man. Get what you're saying in context, how you were explaining it. But yeah, there are some deeper things that go into fatherhood, and motherhood that you can't necessarily just box into these like different categories, and I've really witnessed that in my own upbringing and then in my own marriage. We have these views or like gender roles, or we have these specifics of, okay, this is what you do and this is what I do. But when you really, when people are in healthy relationships and in healthy families, you can really see how you show up the way you're supposed to show up as a parent. But when things are unhealthy, you do tend to dibble and dabble wherever you think you're supposed to be as a parent. And that just may not be what that child needs from you as a father or as a mother. And so I can definitely see how that can be misconstrued and misunderstood, by a lot of people too. But then we got to think about a lot of times when celebrities are explaining different things to a wide variety of people. Um, because of their backgrounds, typically, it may not be rooted in clinical, practices. It may come from a spiritual aspect, or it may come from some other form, of coaching or some other type of psychology that may not necessarily be researched, based. And then that's how they're presenting it to people. So yeah, it's such a slippery slope. I think as professionals, and again, we've talked about this too, whereas a lot of people in that clinical role typically stay away, from trying to speak to the masses on that scale, because they know that it's more in depth than that. It's not as cut and dry, and it can't always be communicated in a 90-second clip, or a reel or something, it's a real deep dive. And yeah, I definitely could see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, and I hope that people that watch that too, I'm really hoping that it didn't turn anyone off, because yeah, while initially when I first heard it, it made me take a step back. But when you listen to one, you can see a person's heart when they're talking. So when you can even take that from when she gave context a little bit later on with what she was talking about, while you might not necessarily agree with it, you can tell that it's coming from a very genuine place where she's not trying to diminish anybody. She's not trying to elevate anyone. So, I would really hope that, and I think we as a people need to get a lot more into the habit of trying to understand what's not being said, understanding context, and listening deeper into things. In the social media world, it's very difficult because you just come across people with these very rigid mindsets, and if you say one thing that doesn't appeal to them, you're you're kind of dead to them, and then here comes the trolling and things like that. So I just hope that anybody that saw her stuff, she is sharp. Like she is on point with a lot of the stuff that she says.
Yeah.
So I just hope other people realize that too. She's on it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.